Incredible rescue, forgotten combat veteran reveals hidden skills to revive helpless helicopter. The sun hung low over Maplewood, a seemingly peaceful town now plunged into chaos. Jerry, a mechanic who once wore medals on his chest, faced a different kind of battle. He glanced up from beneath the hood of a rusted car as he heard the distant, terrible roar of a helicopter spiraling down, slicing through the air with a violent intensity that sent tremors down his spine. It was the sound of desperation cutting through the gentle cadence of life he had come to know, the clinking of his tools now overshadowed by the shock of impending disaster. Instinctively, his heart raced, thoughts of his service, of standing tall among his brothers in combat, clashed with the harsh reality of who he felt he had become. Was he the man the town needed? As he stood, dirt-streaked and weary, he felt marked by the past, battling ghosts that whispered tales of weakness in his ears. Families gathered in a frenzied state, eyes darting to him, a former soldier, a combat veteran. But who was he now? The doubt gnawed at him. Thoughts swirled like the debris scattered on the wind. Would they see a hero, or simply a shadow of a man too broken to respond? He was paralyzed by conflicting emotions, the desire to act and the fear of failure, the hope of redemption tainted by the weight of his past. The helicopter lay crumpled in a field, a fallen titan, and as terrified whispers circulated, a knot twisted deeper in Jerry's gut. They wanted him, didn't they? They wanted the brave soldier who charged into danger. But who was he to stand before them, to think he could rise to an occasion, when the scars of war still marred his heart? His thoughts spiraled into a chasm of despair, muscles tense as he wrestled with the ghost of a man once filled with pride and purpose. Memories of his comrades flashed before him, faces lost, sacrifices made, lives torn apart by chaos. Would they be ashamed of him? Would his fear, raw and searing, undermine not just his worth, but the memories of those who had given everything? He clutched his wrench, a familiar weight now forged with doubt, every turn of the metal symbolizing years of loss and regret. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jerry inhaled deeply, the air thick with smoke and dread. His heart surged as the urgency of the situation pressed in on him. He felt the sharpening instinct kicking in, a ghost of muscle memory urging him to act. Would the strength gleaned from precious moments in battle return to him, or was he now just a mechanic trapped by his own mental blockades? He approached the wreckage, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The twisted metal jutted menacingly, and as he prepared to dig into the heart of the machine, a paralyzing doubt gripped him once more. If he failed now, would it crush any chance of reclaiming himself? Would he falter in front of those he once fought to protect? Just as he braced himself for the challenge, a screeching sound resonated through the air, and darkness threatened to engulf him. In that moment of ultimate turmoil, the weight of expectation intensified. Could he conquer both the literal and metaphorical wreckage, or was he destined to stay ensnared in the shadows? The moment of hesitation clung to Jerry like a shadow. The wreckage sprawled before him, a testament to despair and a whisper of redemption. He felt every pair of eyes on him, each gaze a flicker of hope mingled with skepticism. He had evaded so much in his life, but this could not be avoided. He swallowed against the lump of fear in his throat. The wreckage was not just metal and machinery, it radiated a chilling reminder of his past. Every beat of his heart screamed a challenge to confront the ghosts that had haunted him since leaving the battlefield. He had walked away from those fights, and yet here stood a new war, a battle to reclaim the man he knew himself to be. Jerry stepped forward, squaring his shoulders, a familiar posture rooted deep within him. He sometimes wondered if his only identity had been tied to the uniform he once wore. Yet with each step toward the helicopter, fragments of his training started to surface. As a soldier, he had learned to think critically under pressure, to analyze the situation meticulously, and to respond with precision. Could he embrace those instincts once more? The helicopter's tail rotor lay smashed, a grotesque fan strewn against the dirt. Jerry knelt to examine the twisted body of the craftsman's remains. Moments of clarity flickered through the fog. He could hear the echoes of his training. It was about assessing the damage first, identifying what needed doing. He inhaled again, determined. What mattered was not who he had been, but who he could still become, the echoes of valor resonating through the debris of self-doubt. He reached for his tools, his hands steadying as he started to maneuver through the wreck. The chaos of flying shards and twisted metal became his focus, drowning out the whispers that attempted to undermine him. The skill lived within him, latent and yearning to break forth, like the mechanisms he once repaired with finesse. As he worked, Jerry recalled the urgency of missions past, when there was no room for floundering. Mechanics, like soldiers, required action. With each turn of the wrench, he noticed his breathing steadying. Each connection he made with the machine began to merge with his connection to self. This was not merely an act of rescue, it was a reawakening. Could he integrate these buried strengths into the man he was now? Now and again, he glanced at the faces watching, the once nervous family members slowly gathering closer, diminishing their distance. Their hope radiated in his direction, breathing life into his resolve. He clenched his jaw, moving faster, driven by something profound. This was more than repairing a helicopter, it was about rebirthing the soldier within him, the protector who had once fought for lives beyond his own. Just when he felt the tide of confidence swelling in his chest, a chilling realization struck him. He was blinded by the wreckage, but the helicopter harbored survivors trapped inside. The dread swelled anew, a stark reminder that the stakes reached beyond his own battle with self-worth. He hesitated for only a second, but the memory of sacrifice flashed vivid, a choice, the essence of service. As doubt threatened to crumble his newfound resolve, the realization surged again. He needed to commit, not just to the mechanics of the helicopter but to a principle he had held dear. Responsibility. Jerry surged back to action, driven by an urgent promise. This was it. He understood now that reclaiming his identity was not merely personal, it was tied to every life hanging in the balance. Inferring hope, he would not only meet this challenge, he would redefine who he was amid the wreckage. What remained was not just a question of physical prowess but a test of spirit. He inhaled sharply, ready to confront what lay ahead, aware that the moment of truth had arrived. And only then did he hear the faintest whimper. Someone was still inside the helicopter. Would he find the courage to lead himself and others through the dark heart of this crisis? With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Jerry's heart raced at the sound of that faint whimper from within the wreckage. The noise, though soft, echoed loud in his mind, translating into a whispered plea for help. It was a catalyst igniting the embers of his determination. He had come too far to falter now. He shifted his focus from the task at hand to the pressing reality of the individuals trapped inside. Panic threatened to surge anew, but he suppressed it, replacing fear with a resolute calm. He had faced peril before. The battlefield had taught him that moments of crisis reveal who we truly are. The silent lessons of survival and leadership were clanging in his skull, demanding to be put to use. Moving with newfound urgency, Jerry set aside the tools he'd been using on the helicopter's frame. His training kicked in like an engine roaring to life. Instinctively, he began to assess the wreckage for access points. He needed to reach in and extract whoever was still breathing, moving past the remnants of twisted metal that felt like remnants of his own battles. Taking a step closer, he spotted a gap near the cabin just wide enough for him to slide through if he contorted his body. He didn't hesitate, this was a mission, and people were depending on him. As he crouched to fit into the confined space, the memories of squeezing through tight terrains in Afghanistan rushed back, sharpening his senses. It was an echo from a life that felt both foreign and familiar. Inch by inch, he wedged himself into the cockpit, the metallic tang of fuel and dust filling his nostrils. He could see the figure lying in a twisted mess of harness and debris, a young man, unconscious but alive. Panic mingled with determination. As Jerry assessed the injuries, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him even harder. "Stay calm, just breathe," he whispered to himself. The young man's breathing was shallow. The situation demanded an immediate plan. Jerry needed to stabilize him, to remove him from the wreckage without causing further harm. He reached for the safety harness and began to unclip it, each movement calculated, each muscle taut with concentration. Yet, just as he freed the survivor, a series of popping sounds shattered the tense silence. An echo of fear gripped him. The helicopter, unstable and compromised, could collapse entirely. Each moment felt stretched, a tightrope walk between urgency and risk. Thoughts of the watchers outside surged unbidden into his mind, those faces that had slowly edged closer, holding their collective breaths. Their hope now rested in his hands, he could not fail them. As he cradled the young man's head to keep it steady, Jerry felt another wave of clarity wash over him. It was not enough to just save the boy, he needed to extricate them both, and quickly. Jerry pushed against the metal wall separating him from the outside, mentally calculating how desperately he could extract himself through the tight opening. It was no longer a mere task of machinery but an act demanding every ounce of physical and mental strength he possessed. Clenching his jaw, he caught sight of the outlines of the concerned faces trying to peek inside the wreck. They were witnesses to his struggle for regeneration, and amid this governmental urgency, he felt their silent support surging through him. Jerry's instincts kicked in again. He was a soldier. He would lead them not just out of this wreckage, but out of the dark shadows of his past. "Hang tight," he urged the young man, feeling the pulse of fear and courage intertwining within him. He felt alive, reconnected with a purpose that had long eluded him. He was not just saving a life, he was resurrecting his own. The moment required him to push through the fear, but there was no retry, he was committed. With one heave, he propelled both of them toward the small opening. And just then, behind him, he heard a sharp snap. The wreckage creaked ominously, a stark reminder of mortality. Panic surged yet again. Time was running out, and as the world spun into chaos, Jerry wasn't merely about to lose his own battle, he was on the brink of a revelation that could change everything. Could he truly rescue not just this life, but the aspects of himself he had long buried? The stakes had risen, and what lay ahead felt monumental. Would that final test of will translate into a renewal of purpose as the wreckage around them started to give way? The metal groaned, a tired warning that sent a jolt of urgency through Jerry. Time was slipping, the fleeting seconds worth more than gold. With one final push, he squeezed through the narrow gap, the world outside blurring into motion as adrenaline kicked into overdrive. The cold air slapped at his face, a jarring contrast to the heat of the wreck. He coughed, the taste of fuel still bitter on his tongue, but he couldn't focus on that. The young man was unconscious in his grip, vulnerable and limp. Jerry steadied his breath, summoning the calm that sometimes felt elusive outside of war. This wasn't just about physical extraction, it was a test of his resolve. In that moment, his past years of feeling broken and lost fell away like the debris that had once trapped him. He felt the weight of the boy shift in his arms as he stumbled toward safety. Others, the onlookers, rushed in to help, their hands reaching out. The young man's shallow breaths became a rhythm for Jerry, a reminder of the fragile boundary between life and death. "Careful," he barked, instinctively snapping into a leadership role. "We need to get him on solid ground, quick." Jerry's heart raced as several pairs of hands lifted the boy from him and carried him away. Hazards hung in the air, the wreckage teetering dangerously. He was a soldier again, directing a rescue operation, not just for the boy but for himself. Each shout hung heavy with urgency and purpose. As he stepped back from the disaster site, one of the onlookers, a woman with wide eyes, grabbed his arm. "Are you all right?" she asked. Her voice drifted like a call from the past, a lifeline to a world he thought he had left behind. "I'm fine. Just make sure he's okay." But her grip held something heavy, a question. Did he truly believe he could set aside his burdens with a moment of brave action? Would saving someone else mean he could save himself too? He knew he had only just begun to emerge from years of struggle, and questions floated in his mind, waiting for answers that seemed so uncertain. As the boy was taken away for medical attention, Jerry took a step back, breathing, grounding himself. The chaos around him began to fade into a blur, his thoughts narrowing to what had transpired. People had seen him, had witnessed his struggle, but he realized he wasn't just showcasing a military instinct. He was confronting the lingering shadows of his own fears. But then a flicker of doubt pierced through. Was he doing it for them? For the audience that gathered, breath held in collective worry? Or was this true redemption, a chance to reclaim a piece of the man he had used to be? The fear tried to claw its way back in, but he pushed through. He had taken a step forward. I need to know more, he whispered to himself, reigniting the flame that had started with the boy's whimper. He wanted to understand his own reactions, his own motivations. The surrounding crowd began to disperse as authorities arrived, and he felt the roominess of the moment hang like an unresolved chord. He had to face the feelings that swelled within him, to piece together the man who could react with such courage and yet stand on the precipice of uncertainty. Just as he turned to leave, a voice called out the rescue team leader. Hey! You did great back there. We need someone on the medical team. You think you could help out? Jerry froze, the words hanging heavily. Help? It was a chance to move forward, away from past ghosts. Yet, every instinct urged caution. What if he stumbled? What if this exposure only intensified his doubts? The light had shifted in him, pulling him toward a new confrontation. The decision to step into a new role loomed ahead, but would he take the leap, or would he retreat into hesitant silence again? The next opportunity to emerge anew pressed closer, as change held its breath in the spaces between them. The chatter of the crowd slowly faded into the background as Jerry processed the call for help from the rescue team leader. He stood in uncertainty, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins, yet countered by the weight of indecision. Every fiber of his being screamed to step forward, to take on the role that had once defined him. But the shadows of self-doubt lurked at the edges. What if he failed again? He sensed the passing eyes and murmurs around him. The world seemed to have shifted focus onto him, transforming a fleeting moment of bravery into an expectation that loomed larger than the wreckage behind him. He wanted to be that man again, the one who made decisions confidently while others looked to him for guidance. What if, he whispered under his breath, taking a breath that felt heavier than the last. Hey, we really need you, the team leader urged once more, stepping closer. Think you can help us out? Jerry took a step back, forcing himself to take stock of his feelings. He didn't just question his ability, he grappled with the implications of action itself. Would stepping into this role form a bridge to a lost piece of himself or expose more cracks in a foundation already undermined by years of turmoil? In that moment, memories flooded in, not just flashes of war, but the echoes of his restless nights where sleep withheld its embrace. He had spent so much time trying to bury his past that it had become less a memory and more an anchor, holding him in place while life continued without him. But now, standing on the precipice, faced with the opportunity to contribute again, remnants of hope flickered like dim embers. You can do this, he reminded himself, a voice rising from deep within. He lifted his chin and conceded to the call, moving toward the team leader as if drawn by an unseen force. Okay, I'll help. The relief that washed over him felt both liberating and terrifying. As he pushed through the cacophony, the narrowing space between himself and the medical team, a sense of purpose began to settle within him. Perhaps this was the moment he would discover exactly who he was, not just as a soldier but as a man capable of supporting others who needed him. Soon, he found himself amid the fray of the medical team, the adrenaline reasserting itself as he donned an apron. A newfound clarity accompanied him as he began to assess the chaos. He aligned with their efficient rhythm, merging his instincts with their protocols. Jerry, over here. A nurse beckoned, pointing to an array of supplies. "We need more gauze and antiseptic." With each movement, Jerry began to embrace the pulse of activity surrounding him. He coordinated the resources, aware of the urgency each second represented. It ignited something within him, a sense of authority. Those around him relied on his quick thinking, and traces of a leader began to resurface. Yet as the minutes unraveled, a deeper concern gnawed at him: was he truly ready to engage? Each face reflected in his mind became a mirror of his struggles and queries. Could he stand firm against the storm brewing within, or would the specter of his past convictions rend him apart? Through the hurry and the cries of pain, Jerry felt the quiet whispers of doubt escalating again. What if he faltered now? What if he was not availing healing, but reopening wounds within himself as well as those he sought to help? As he paused, caught between action and hesitation, the haunting question crashed over him: when does the urge to help become an obstacle to one's own recovery? His grip tightened on the gauze, the knot of conflict growing more complex as the weight of the call to heal harmonized with his fear of breaking. Thus, the familiar anxiety coiled tighter, the very essence of redemption hanging in the balance. He was on the verge of reclaiming his place in a world he had felt exiled from, yet now he stood on the edge once more. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed in the distance, jolting Jerry back into the present. It was a reminder that chaos was ever present. The next crisis was right around the corner. Would he allow himself to stride forward, or would he remain rooted in his self-doubt? The moment of decision was upon him, like a dark cloud encroaching, ready to unleash a storm of truths he could no longer avoid. The crash resonated through Jerry's chest, a visceral reminder that chaos demanded attention. The noise sharpened his senses, wiping away the last remnants of hesitation that clung to him like a second skin. For the first time in years, the instinct to act seized him, propelling him forward. He pivoted energetically, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Surrounded by frantic movement, Jerry began to navigate through the disarray, a newfound focus crystallizing within him. Accustomed to high-stakes situations, he honed in on the urgent needs around him. He positioned himself next to the triage nurse, a commanding figure amidst the disarray. "Got a pulse on our casualties?" he asked, his voice steady amidst the chaos. "Barely. The one over there needs immediate attention," she replied, eyes wide but filled with urgency. Jerry nodded and darted towards the stretcher, making mental notes of injuries as he grasped the situation. This was no time to falter. The echoes of self-doubt began to fade as adrenaline surged. As he crouched to assess the patient on the stretcher, he recalled the training that had once felt buried beneath layers of guilt and regret. Each breath he took felt heavy with a choice: live in the shadows of yesterday or embrace the skills honed by years of discipline and sacrifice. "You're going to be okay," he reassured the injured man, confidence threading through his words. Years spent as a leader in dire circumstances transformed beneath his fingertips. "Eric!" shouted the nurse again, urgency lacing her tone. "I need you to prep the supplies." Jerry's eyes darted to the chaos surrounding him. Bloodied bandages, frantic shouts, and wailing cries served as a backdrop to his burgeoning resolve. He scanned the area and started organizing resources, tossing aside lingering doubts. With each box slid into place, he felt like a conductor of this chaotic symphony, orchestrating each element with precision. But just as he began to find his stride, a nagging thread of anxiety dug into his consciousness. What if this newfound authority unraveled as quickly as it emerged? What if the festering wounds of his past disrupted his ability to lead? Shadows whispered again, taunting his growing self-assurance. Thoughts danced at the edge of his mind, plotting descent to disrupt his focus. The presence of another casualty jolted him from his spiraling doubts. Jerry couldn't afford a misstep. He was witnessing the convergence of fate and opportunity. This was his moment to rebuild, to not only heal those around him but to find fragments of his former self, guarding them like precious relics. "Eric, hold him steady," commanded the nurse. The severity of her voice snapped him back into actionable reality. Without another thought, he grasped the patient's arm firmly, steadying the man as he winced in pain. That contact transcended mere physicality, it was an affirmation. In that moment, Jerry recognized his capacity to help others and, potentially, himself. Yet the unexpected intensity of the situation seized him anew. The louder cries from the other patients shattered the fragile confidence he had begun to piece together. What if he couldn't help them all? What if they were all beyond saving? Every question reeled against the backdrop of urgent commotion. He fought against the swirl of despair attempting to anchor him back to the past. Instinct wrestled with fear, demanding clarity. The frantic atmosphere became heavier, warning him that the limit of his emotional reserves was nearing. He had committed to this path, pledged to navigate the chaos alongside his fellow responders, yet what if he couldn't meet their expectations? As the last patient was prepped for transport, Jerry's heart raced. Each heartbeat echoed the uncertainty of all he faced, the fear of failure, the struggle against personal demons. Would he emerge a warrior reborn, or would he falter at the final hurdle? Something deep within him ignited, the flicker of determination turned into a flame. No longer tethered to the ghosts of his past, he embraced this crisis as his battlefield. The voices of doubt would not win, empowerment surged through him. With a fierce resolve, he grabbed every ounce of determination and stood tall among the chaos, defiant in the face of uncertainty. But as another loud crash sounded a signal of imminent danger, a fresh wave of doubt rushed in. How could he muster enough strength to face this new threat? Would he remain standing when the next storm hit, or would he fall back into the shadows once more? The moment of truth loomed large, and Jerry knew he was about to uncover what really lay at the heart of his struggle. The cacophony struck him harder than the crash itself. The sound echoed through the makeshift triage area, blending with cries for help and the anxious shuffling of responders. Jerry's gaze darted, processing the chaos with renewed urgency. The fear that had settled like a weight in his chest now felt lighter, replaced by the surge of focus and awareness that he could not only react but also lead. "Stay with me, buddy," he murmured to the patient before him, whose eyes conveyed a desperate plea for survival. As he assessed the man's injuries, adrenaline infused every cell in Jerry's body. This wasn't merely about the victims, it was about proving to himself that he was capable of facing his own turmoil. "Eric." The nurse's voice sliced through his concentration again, more insistent this time. "We need to clear these sections and prepare for more casualties. Are you with me?" Her demand ignited a fire within him. He straightened, ready to mobilize. "Yes. What do you need?" "Help me with these bandages. Someone's cornered in the wreckage over there, and we need to stabilize them before extraction." His fingers moved quickly, gathering supplies with a precision that surprised him. He had always been good in a crisis, but now he felt linked to something greater, driven by a desire to prove that he was more than the labels he'd worn for too long. As he worked, he glimpsed the shared fear and determination in the eyes of fellow responders, each exhibiting their own struggles against the tides of doubt. The spark was infectious. "Move that stretcher over here," said another responder, snapping Jerry back into action. As he assisted, he could feel a swell of confidence rising. Instinctively, he began assigning roles, directing his colleagues with concise commands. "You go flip those splints, I'll take care of the setting." Conceptually new, he was becoming a force of organization within the chaos. Yet, as he took on more responsibility, another wave of uncertainty washed over him. What if his decisions caused harm instead of healing? Each choice felt like a drop in an ocean of consequences. The stakes were higher now. Beyond his past failures loomed the potential harm to those displaced by the crash. Just as he pushed through the noise in his head, an overwhelming memory surged up: his time in combat, faced with life-and-death decisions. It had been easy to see the enemy when in uniform, to take action without hesitation. But here, injuries were the true enemy, and the victims were innocent, pleading for salvation. A flash of doubt whispered to him, was he still that soldier? Had he turned his back on the skills he'd once relied upon? In that moment, he realized that the only person holding him back was himself. "Now!" shouted the triage nurse, breaking through his internal battle. "Hold the 4 steady. We need that fluid flowing fast." With steady hands, he complied, reining in his doubts. The connection to his past steadied him in the present, and the sight of the exhausted yet hopeful faces inspired him to rise even further. Then, the ground rumbled beneath them, a vibration that settled like a tense anticipation in his chest. The helicopter above began its descent, heavy with the sound of its rotor blades slicing through the air. "We've got incoming!" someone yelled. A torrent of people backed away instinctively. Was this new source of chaos a blessing or another challenge? Jerry's heart raced as he watched the scene unfold. Old fears collided with newfound resolve. He was at the edge of something pivotal. How would he manage this urgent expectation? The faces around him were riddled with anxiety, mirroring his own turmoil. Could he rally everyone one last time? As he took a deep breath, he felt the flicker of his inner warrior refusing to die. "Listen up," he called out. "We have to stick together. No one gets left behind." But just as he rallied his team, a sudden explosion jolted the ground, and debris rained down. Forcing his mind to focus, he scanned their surroundings, searching for what had just become a dire situation. Would he be able to step up once more amidst this renewed uncertainty? Would he face his past and emerge not just a soldier, but a leader intent on forging a new path? This moment pressed hard against his core, and he realized a truth clutching at the fringes of his consciousness. There was more to this moment than survival. It felt destined for transformation. The question throbbed in his mind as sirens wailed, echoing a potent truth. How far was he prepared to go to claim back not only his skills but the life he thought he had lost? The world spun in chaotic fragments as debris whirled through the air. Jerry's instincts kicked in as the initial shockwave faded, igniting an urgency that coiled tightly around his chest. This was no longer an exercise in leadership, it was a matter of survival for everyone present, including himself. "Eric, get the medical supplies. Mark, help evacuate those trapped." His commands rose above the din, a beacon amidst the turmoil. The instinct to help was fueled not just by a sense of duty, but by a gnawing desire to redefine himself, an echo from his past that had long felt distant. He darted toward the nearest cinder block, shielding himself from the rain of debris. The feel of the gritty surface beneath his palm brought a rush of clarity. This wasn't the battlefield he'd known, but the psychological battles were achingly familiar. He had always thrived on extracting order from chaos, and now would be no different. Each movement he made felt deliberate, each action a piece of a larger puzzle unfolding in front of him. In moments of crisis, decisions had to be made swiftly. He couldn't dwell on what could go wrong or how he was perceived. He had to assess, adapt, and execute. As his colleagues handled the immediate urgency of the situation, Jerry stole a moment to turn introspective. Doubt began to creep in, but he sternly muttered to himself, "I am not that man anymore. I am here to save lives." Every churn of anxiety was countered with determination. He had survived war. This was a different kind of warfare where people needed him more than he ever truly understood. "Jerry, up here." The voice of the nurse cut through his reverie. He followed the direction of her urgent gaze and saw a woman trapped among the rubble, her leg pinned beneath a beam. The source of peril hadn't just erupted in the air, it had now become a pressing challenge right in front of him. "Can you hear me?" he shouted, ensuring she was conscious. Her panicked eyes met his, a moment of profound connection amidst fear. It mirrored the camaraderie he shared with soldiers in dire situations. This was no different, just inverted. He was fighting not against the enemy, but for those who needed saving. "Hold on. We're coming." The surge of adrenaline transformed Jerry into a conductor of coordinated chaos. His colleagues rushed over, focusing their attention on her rescue. An unspoken understanding cemented between him and the nurse, and time slipped into a different rhythm. They moved instinctively, prioritizing safety and efficiency. "Let us brace the beam," he ordered, rallying his team. "On 3, we lift." The Count echoed, igniting a fierce determination that coursed through them. As they pulled the beam away, Jerry caught a glimpse of the woman's expression morph from fright to flickering hope. But then he noticed something deeper pressing into his psyche. The moment was a cathartic revelation. He wasn't merely reliving past glories, he was forging an entirely new identity in the crucible of crisis. One more push. Ready and lift. Together, they maneuvered the beam, a unit beneath his guidance. With the situation secured, Jerry felt a rush of satisfaction wash over him. It blended seamlessly with the urgency of the moment, cementing his resolve. He de-harnessed memories of war not as constraints but as fertile ground for growth. He could weave his past experiences into a tapestry of resilience and skill. Just as the trapped woman was freed and carried away toward safety, Jerry's heart pulsed with a mix of elation and trepidation. He realized this newfound sense of purpose came with its own weight. What he hadn't anticipated was how quickly such moments could transform him from a forgotten combat veteran into a beacon of hope. Yet, as he turned away from the rescue, another tremor rattled the ground beneath him. The remnants of the shattered world lingered ominously, and with them came a sense of impending doom. What awaited him in this next wave of chaos? Would he be able to once again transform the surrounding fear into unfaltering strength? Each moment of his metamorphosis beckoned a deeper question: could he continue to fully embody this emerging leader when again faced with adversity? With uncertainty swirling around him, he was already on a precipice, ready to confront the next challenge that would prompt him to evolve even further. The battle within him was far from over. The ground trembled beneath Jerry's feet as he instinctively crouched, feeling another moment of chaos begin to unfurl around him. He took a deep breath, attempting to center himself amidst crashing sounds resembling distant thunder. In that instant, he faced an undeniable truth: the chaos was far from over, and so was his journey of transformation. "Secure the perimeter," he shouted, his voice slicing through the confusion like a knife. His colleagues were still reeling from the rescue, and he knew he had to pull them back into action. They needed to remain vigilant. This wasn't just a singular event but an ongoing battle for survival. Dust and debris danced in the fading light, and Jerry felt the world closing in on him. Memories of combat surfaced, previous responsibilities, adrenaline-driven decisions, but this time, the stakes were palpably different. He was no longer in uniform, but the skills he had honed in demanding situations began to seep into his consciousness like a steady pulse. As he moved through the debris-laden site, Jerry felt intuitive urges guiding his steps. "Eric and Mark, check the collapsed structures for further survivors. We need to set up a command center by the SUV." Each command flowed naturally, drawing from both his past leadership and inherent protective instincts. But this leadership felt distinctly different. It wasn't about commanding a squadron, it was about connecting with people at a fundamental level. Some of the lingering doubts from earlier began to bubble up. Was he truly capable of guiding this group? Would they recognize the leader he was trying to become? But mastering these insecurities felt crucial. He could not afford to let them dictate his actions. As he approached the SUV, spotting the tools of their trade, he felt a thrill of purpose summon him forward. He began gathering items methodically, creating a mental checklist of last-minute supplies they might need. Scanning the surroundings, he noticed a few wide-eyed newcomers, people who looked lost between the horror of the situation and the urgency of the moment. "Hey!" he called to them, suddenly aware of his role as both a guide and a comforter. "Stay close, we're going to need everyone's help. I promise, you're not alone in this." He saw confusion shift to solidarity in their eyes as they rallied beside him, each of them beginning to process their roles in this rising storm. Yet, the sense of responsibility weighed heavily on him. Could he indeed be their anchor? The pressures of leadership dug into him, prompting him to acknowledge yet again how vital it was for him to let go of self-doubt. The earth jolted with another aftershock, sending a shudder through the group. "Stay focused," he instructed sharply, but a panic started to bubble among the newcomers. Their fear threatened to pull him into an abyss of insecurity. Jerry wrestled with the urge to retreat into self-doubt. He had to contain the tremors rippling through his heart. And then, a familiar sound rose above the cacophony, the whirring of helicopter blades slicing through the air, shifting the balance of uncertainty. It invigorated him, awakening an old familiarity. He had relied on helicopters for extraction in combat, their whines a signal of safety and direction. Could the arrival of the helicopter be a sign that help was on the way? Or was it just another wave of impending chaos? As the aircraft drew closer, Jerry's heart raced, not from fear but from understanding the gravity of this moment. He was standing at a crossroads, about to define not just his path but the paths of those around him. This was no longer just a fight for survival, it was an opportunity for leadership, a pivotal moment of identity rebirth. Could he harness this chance to coalesce the team, using their fears as a catalyst for growth and resolve? And just as clarity emerged, another ominous rumble reverberated through the ground, jolting him back to the weight of responsibility pressing upon his shoulders. How would he respond when the next storm of chaos arrived? Would he rise as the leader he aspired to be, or sink beneath the pressure of expectation? In that moment, the truth loomed large: he had yet to truly confront the deepest fears lurking within him. As the helicopter grew ever closer above, a formidable question hung in the air: would he be willing to confront the most daunting aspect of this challenge, his own insecurities as they landed, ready to maximize the opportunity that awaited him? As the helicopter settled with a disarming thud, the rotor blades whipped up dust and debris, swirling around Jerry like a tempest. In that chaos, he sensed the weight of purpose pressing down heavily upon him. He had to seize this moment. "Everyone, you know your tasks," he barked, his voice rising above the roar of the helicopter. "Let us move." There was no room for hesitation. He understood now, with clarity, that each command was not simply an obligation but a reaffirmation of his presence and capability. Relief surged within him, a sense of rightful authority blooming. With deft precision, he began herding the bystanders, guiding the newly minted team of helpers to position themselves for potential rescues. Their focus sharpened as they began to mirror his urgency. Together, they formed a robust network of support, a tetherless connection ignited by collective determination. "Gather supplies, we'll need more bandages," he directed, swiftly snatching items from the supplies laid out beside the SUV. The remnants of chaos fueled his growing sense of empowerment. He had shifted from uncertainty to action in mere moments, regaining the soldier's instinct he once thought long buried. But the silence pierced him quietly. The apprehensive eyes around him sought not just orders, but reassurance. Recognizing the tender complexity of emotions swirling amongst them, he paused. "Listen," he said, stepping closer to the gathering crowd. "I know this is overwhelming. But we've faced challenges before. We are stronger together. Trust in each other, and let us do this." Surprisingly, those simple words anchored something deep within himself. Not only was he bolstering their spirits, he was infusing himself with a sense of belonging. In moments where doubt lingered, he had stirrings of confidence reborn. As the rescue team climbed out of the helicopter, Jerry felt emboldened, recognizing their expertise showcased. They were professionals who relied on smooth, coordinated movements to regain control of a situation spiraling towards panic and chaos. There was magic in watching skilled hands come together, symptomatic of purpose overlapping between their ambitions and his renewed spirit. "Let us set up a front line. Eric, follow that stretcher. Mark, help secure a route for evacuations." His directions flowed like a stream, naturally integrating him into a mindset of community and collaboration. But in the tempest of the frantic atmosphere, emotionally laden truths began to surface. Among his commands came a deeper challenge: was Jerry emerging as a leader by reclaiming his own worth, or was this assumption of authority merely a disguise? Could he genuinely reconcile his past failures with the accountability demanded in the present? "Jerry!" shouted one of the responders, crystallizing his hesitations. "We need a strong leader at the helm." The call rang through him, igniting that familiar flicker of anxiety, but no longer dimmed by an overwhelming tide of self-doubt. Instead, it sparked resolve. "I'll take the lead," he responded confidently, his voice steady and unwavering. Even as he embraced the challenge, the melody of lost time persisted, echoing previous nights spent wrestling with regret. What he didn't know was how far he had already come. He could breathe life into his own spirit by trusting in the instinct that had been there all along. Organizing the responders was not merely a role, it embodied the transformation he had fought to achieve. Each decision felt weighty, each step a metric of growth. There was a burgeoning pride swelling inside him. He had risen from the depths of despair and uncertainty to reclaim authority over his story, one of healing, purpose, and leadership. In that defining moment, Jerry recognized the metamorphosis enveloping him. He was not merely a mechanic or a soldier, he was a leader with the ability to synthesize past experiences into meaningful action. The exhilaration of that realization coursed through his veins stronger than ever. As the rescue efforts unfolded, a profound truth blossomed within that embracing. Vulnerability was not an admission of defeat but a catalyst for true strength. Each survivor pulled to safety reaffirmed this message, rekindling confidence that had once felt diminished. He saw reflections of his own journey, and a profound sense of validation washed over him. As the final casualty was evacuated and the sun began to dip below the horizon, Jerry stood before his makeshift command center, surveying the scene. Exhausted yet electrified, he embraced the remnants of chaos. He looked at the faces surrounding him, both grateful and full of stories, and he felt the bridges he had built emerge sturdy and unwavering. "I couldn't have done this without you," he whispered as he met the eyes of those who had fought alongside him. Whether they were former responders or people from the crowd, they had formed a tapestry of unity that fortified his resolve to lead. At that moment of profound clarity, Jerry smiled. He felt whole, he felt recognized not just for his past, but for who he had become. With every ounce of strength infused into his bones, he knew he had conquered the battlefield of his mind, finally emerging as the man he had always been destined to be. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue on the rubble they had tackled, and Jerry's heart swelled with pride. He embraced the vision of a new chapter, confident and resounding in his capacity to heal others, and in the end, himself. This chapter may be closed, but the story was just beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Show your love for these powerful narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support this channel because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of sharing, liking, and engaging. Don't wait even one more second to join this movement.